Hello, community, and welcome back to another Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, C Suite Trusted Advisor, Board Director, and Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategy Consultant, helping members of the C Suite and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Today, I'm kicking off my annual look at what's scary about diversity, inclusion, and belonging to coincide with Halloween. All month, I'm going to be talking about a topic that's been brewing in corporate boardrooms across the nation: the evolving landscape of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. I find the trend in companies that are deprioritizing this work to be very scary for the workplace. In recent years, we've witnessed a curious shift within the corporate world. It's a shift that has seen some companies shying away from the very term that once dominated their HR agendas: diversity. In some instances, they've even gone so far as to change the title of Chief Diversity Officer and even eliminated such positions entirely. So, what's behind this trend? And what does it say about the prevailing attitudes towards diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives among the five generations currently making up our workforce? Let's start by looking at these generations: the silent generation, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. Each has a unique perspective on the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion, shaped by their experiences and the world around them. The silent generation and baby boomers grew up during a time when the civil rights movement was at its peak. They witnessed monumental changes in society and may value diversity as a moral imperative. However, some may view the evolving discourse on diversity as overly politicized and may be resistant to change that feels like an affront to traditional values. Generation X, often referred to as the middle child of generations, tends to be pragmatic. They're less idealistic than the boomers and more open to change than the silent generation. However, they may also harbor skepticism about the effectiveness of corporate diversity initiatives. Millennials, on the other hand, came of age in a world where diversity and inclusion were central to education and social discourse. They often view these initiatives as not just ethical, but essential for businesses to thrive. They expect companies to prioritize diversity and will often choose employers that align with their values. And finally, Generation Z, the newest entrants to the workforce, are the most diverse generation yet. They've grown up in a digital age with unparalleled access to information. They tend to be activists seeking workplaces that embody the ideals of diversity and social justice. But what does all of this mean for corporations navigating this shifting landscape? It's clear that the conversation around diversity has evolved, and it's time for companies to ask themselves some fundamental questions. First, and perhaps most crucially, is diversity still relevant? The answer is a resounding yes. Diversity brings different people, perspectives, ideas, and experiences to the table, fostering innovation and creativity. It's not just about meeting quotas, it's about building a better business. Secondly, how do we continue the dialogue? It can be counterproductive to change Chief Diversity Officer job titles or eliminate these positions altogether. Instead, companies must commit to fostering a culture of inclusion and belonging. It means engaging in ongoing conversations, actively listening to employee experiences, and being committed to the work by updating their policies, practices, and procedures to be more inclusive from the front lines up through the C suite. Finally, the third question corporations need to ask themselves is: how do we see real change within our cultures? Simply paying lip service to diversity initiatives won't cut it. Companies must invest in comprehensive training, equitable hiring practices, and leadership accountabilities as core strategies to their business success. Organizations that are serious about changing behaviors that will result in a more inclusive workplace will not only consider the talent pools from which they are fishing for new talent, but will also be intentional about developing a pipeline from which they promote proven talent to get them in the seats and provide the support to keep them there. mentoring, coaching, and ongoing career development aligned with corporate succession planning. Real change requires effort, but it's effort worth making. It's about acknowledging that diversity, equity, inclusion, and especially belonging aren't just buzzwords. They're fundamental principles that should guide every aspect of our corporate culture. The trend of shying away from the term diversity in corporate circles reflects the evolving conversation on this critical issue. However, it doesn't diminish the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives in our workplaces. Understanding the perspectives of the 5 generations in our workforce is vital, but the key takeaway is clear. We must continue to push for progress, ask the right questions, and take decisive action to build a more equitable and inclusive future. This month on Real Conversations from the C Suite, I'm excited to have a panel of subject matter experts that will help me explore even further what's scary about the evolving landscape of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. In our first conversation, I'll be introducing you to our guests, learning a little bit about their individual contributions to diversity work, and most importantly, what drew them and keeps them in the space. In our second conversation, I'll ask them each to share what scares them about the evolving landscape of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives in today's current workplace environment. Finally, we'll wrap up this month's discussion by asking each of them what they believe to be a way forward that will take the scariness out of diversity, inclusion, and belonging for all of us now and in the future. I hope you'll join me and the panel for my annual look at what's scary about diversity, inclusion, and belonging work. So we can all focus on the scariness of the calorie count we will unintentionally consume on Halloween. To learn more about my services and resources, please go to my website at drnita.com. Remember, spell out the word doctor. And while you're there, click the Keeping It Real podcast link at the top of the landing page to hear this show again or any past broadcast. You can also find me on your favorite podcast player, so please get in the flow, follow, like, and overshare with your network any of my Keeping It Real podcasts that help you reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Until next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.